Ask for it with pineapple on, because I've heard that goes down really well in Italy if you ask for proper pizza with pineapple on.
Yeah, and make sure you don't put parmesan on your seafood pasta as well.
You'll be out with Jonathan David.
This is Park the Bus with Steven Caldwell, Kevin Kilbane and Luke Wileman.
So here we are in Graham Leggett's once again. Kevin Kilbane alongside me. Steven Caldwell is on his travels once again. He'll be joining us in just a few moments from somewhere around the world. How was your holidays?
Good, very good. Watched a lot of games, which was great. Just pigged out in front of the TV. I've put a lot of weight on. That's what I do know, Luke.
We all have, I think.
Yeah, put a lot of weight, and I enjoyed the festive spirit. I was up with the festive spirit, shall I say? Let's just say that.
That's a shock.
Yeah, I enjoyed myself. I said watched a lot of games. I watched a lot of sport in general, but I watched a lot of games, and it was great getting up. When you get up early in the morning, when you've got the young kids, it's nice to get up and watch those games that's coming at you across the world. So it was great.
The thing is, Kev, as an athlete like yourself, when you put a bit of weight on, it's probably easier taking it off.
I don't know.
When you get to my stage and you've never been an athlete in your life, it's a lot more difficult to
I'm well and truly middle-aged though now, Luke, so I think it is a little bit harder once you start to get beyond a certain age, you know? That's pretty much it. What about yours? How was your Christmas?
It was great. Yeah, here for Christmas. And then Boxing Day went to England.
Yeah.
So saw a couple of Sheffield United games.
Yeah. Good.
Wins at Stoke, win at home to Leicester.
There's your mention of Sheffield United.
There you go.
You know what? But you'd said something to me as well. You were going to Sheffield United at Stoke.
Yeah.
There's something special, isn't there, about watching your team when they go away from home, especially when they get a win. Stoke's a big club, and that would have been a big game, eh?
3,000 or 4,000 Blades fans all there in the corner and giving it to the Stoke fans, and the kids loved it. Kids, it was like perfect. And then at the end, Chrissy Wilder comes across and applauds you, thanks you for travelling and all that. Oh, it's perfect. It was perfect. It was a great trip.
They're on fire. They are on fire.
So where do you think Caldwell is right now? Because I've been following his Instagram.
Oh, was it Paris? I don't know.
Paris, Newcastle, Glasgow.
Yeah.
I think he was actually in Spain as well recently and met up with Tani and Tejan.
Yes.
A bit of Canadian content there. So
must be still in Spain, surely. That's what I think.
I don't know, but we obviously know about Where's Waldo. So let's do Where's Caldo and try and bring in Steven Caldwell from somewhere, I think still in Europe, Stevie.
Still in Europe, guys, but I've moved on from Valencia and I've arrived in Naples. I'm in the south of Italy. And I'm just going to get a big slice of pizza when I finish this podcast, because I'm told. And just to keep the weight going, I'm the same as you guys. I've put on a few pounds in the last little period here over the festive time. But I'm going to go get another bit of pizza. I may as well keep it going.
Ask for it with pineapple on, because I've heard that goes down really well in Italy. if you ask for proper pizza with pineapple on.
Yeah, and make sure you don't put parmesan on your seafood pasta as well.
You'll be out with Jonathan David. Tell us about your trip so far. And yesterday, you had the chance to catch up with two Canadian internationals, Tani Oluwaseyi and Tejan Buchanan.
I did. We went to Villarreal match, Alaves. They played Deportivo Alaves, and I met the guys. I saw the guys after the game, which was really great to see them. I think they were a bit confused as to why Camila Gonzalez and I were in at Villarreal in the mix zone, but it was great to see them. Not a great game, it has to be said, but Villarreal keep rolling along. They won again. They were really poor in the first half. Renato Vega, you guys remember him? He was at Juve for a bit, Chelsea player recently. He had a shocker. He kept giving the ball away. He was really, really poor on the day. As were a lot of Villarreal players. They weren't at their best, but second half they turned on the style and they won comfortably in the end. Tani got about 5 minutes. Tejan played, I want to say, about an hour, 65 minutes. But yeah, not the best games. Tani, 5 minutes. Tejan, I wouldn't say was at his mercurial best, but he was fine. He was as good as anybody else, but it wasn't really a game where they showed their full attacking flair via that.
Can you imagine Tejan Buchanan at the end of the game is walking through the mix zone and he's in Spain, thinks he's safe, right? And all of a sudden he walks through and he looks and he sees the guy that didn't lock him into the lineup on Race for the Roster week after week after week after week, when he should have done.
Yes.
And we talked about that stubbornness from Stevie to leave it so long.
And we all know they're watching it every week, don't we?
So surely his first, there would have been a look of horror first off when Tejan sees Stevie and thinks, what's he doing here? Is he here to unlock me? Is he here to take me out of the starting 11 for the World Cup on Race for the Roster? Surely you mentioned that, Stevie. He must
Guys. This controversy that you are trying to push here between me and Tajon Buchanan is ridiculous. We go way back. Before Race for the Roster, Tajon and Buchanan and I were good friends. So
that's the point. That's the whole point. You are good friends, and you couldn't even lock him in.
I don't remember a world before Race for the Roster. I don't remember.
I only did that.
It feels like, Stevie, it feels like Race for the Roster's been around forever.
It does. Tell me about it. Yeah, every single week. I'm enjoying the break for that. I need to listen to some of Kilbane's comments.
I've not been challenging you. I have to say, I haven't been challenged. I've been very lenient on you. I could be coming for you a lot more, but I've just kind of took it easy, Stevie.
And to be fair, on this week's Race for the Roster, I'm sure having been in Spain and now in Naples, you haven't actually taken a moment to listen to it. So we'll forgive you for that because you're too busy eating pineapple pizza in Napoli, in Naples. But we did talk a little bit about, and we'll get into it later in the pod, about this January camp that is here for Canada now, and they're playing against Guatemala in LA. Jacob Schaffelberg's injured. How much does that hurt him? Marcelo Flores, who scored twice for Tigres, gets the chance to come in. And for the first time, really show Jesse Marsch what he can do, having been a training camp player before. And is he the sort of player that from this January camp has the most to gain? A couple of players who are on the outside of Stevie's 26 squad, on the bubble, like a Jonathan Osorio or a Jaden Nelson or a James Pantemis. It might only be a January camp against Guatemala, but in a World Cup year, there are still plenty of players right now who could benefit from this.
No, absolutely. I think that's the way that it is. I think that you've got to see it, you've got to view it as a player, as an opportunity. You may think that the World Cup is totally beyond you, but if you have that sort of feeling going into it, then you're not necessarily going to make that impression. I always remember, we missed out on one or two tournaments, to be honest with you, Luke.
Did you?
Yeah, one or two. We were unfortunate on a couple of occasions, missing out on playoffs. But I always remember it was actually towards the back end of my career playing for Ireland, and we went to the States, we went to the US, and we played against Ecuador at Giant Stadium, and I think it was Bolivia in Boston. And there was only me who was one of the experienced players that actually made the journey. I was kind of begged by Steve Staunton, who was the manager at the time, look, I need you to come because we've got no experience around us. So anyway, I went on the trip and it was great. But there were so many players that were so far off, probably our regular 23 or whatever squad total we would have had then, that they saw it as an opportunity to come in and make an impression. And I always say this, it's something that I will always say, Steve, even when you're a young player, it isn't necessarily about the games when you're a young player. Yeah, you want to make an impression. If you're a striker, you want to score, you want to create. If you're a wide man, you want to keep guys out. It's about what you do day to day in the training ground. And Jesse Marsch has continuously spoken about this, Stevie, hasn't he? Where it's about the fundamentals he's putting in place day in, day out on the training ground and what's going to take these players through. So it is such an opportunity for the CPL players in there. Is it an opportunity for them to really make an impression on Jesse? It might not even necessarily be get into the squad, but it might be they might move on to better things in their career. And certainly players on the periphery of that squad, like, I would say, Jonathan Osorio, Jaden Nelson, Pantemis maybe as a third choice goalkeeper. It's up to these guys that have been in the squad in the past to really make an impression on Jesse to get in, Stevie.
Yeah, totally agree, Kev. I think you hit the nail on the head with the comment around about it's just about the game. It's about how they act in the hotel. For some of the newer people who will be in the squad, I think how they react, how they sort of their personality fits. I think Jesse Marsch will be looking at that really closely. How they train, of course, as well. It's a big window for a lot of people. I don't think anybody, whatever position they're in, however many caps they have for Canada, should be going into this window thinking that it's a January camp and it's not as important as, say, a March or a September, October, November window. This is vitally important, whatever stage you're at. But I think if you look at a guy like Marcelo Flores, who is trying to kind of break his way into the 26-man roster, it's vital that he does show that personality, that he does have something to offer the wider group through the training and within the meal rooms and things like that. And then he delivers on the pitch as well. That could really kind of catapult him into the discussion, I would say, for a place in the roster. He is someone that I think has got a lot to gain from someone like this. And then, as I said, I'm not expecting for a minute a Jonathan Osorio's attitude or anything like that to be off. But I think he has to go in with a real enthusiasm into this camp to show that he's got a part to play at the World Cup in the summer, that he can deliver on a few different fronts, not just on the field, because these are the things that are important when you're trying to pick the sort of chemistry of the squad, knowing that guys are going to be kind of living with each other for hopefully 4, 5, 6 weeks. You've got to pick the right kind of characters that add value on and off the pitch. So it's a big window, and Jesse Marsh, I think, will be very observant in terms of how these players are acting and what they might be able to support or deliver when it comes to next summer.
There's only Richie Larea, who is in this squad, who is in Stevie's starting 11 for the opening game. And I think it's 3 or 4 players who are in the squad who are in this squad this time around that are in the 26 right now. So there's a lot of players who, according to Stevie, are on the outside looking in. Just trying to stay alive here. Someone like Joel Waterman, though, as well, Stevie. It's a big one for someone like him, isn't it? You've got him on your depth chart. Now we see Alfie Jones is out injured as well, the Middlesbrough central defender. You've got Jones injured, Bombito injured, Cornelius de Fougerolles on that other side of the central defence on your depth chart and race for Austria, and then Joel Waterman as well.
Yeah, big window, big camp for him, Joel Waterman. He's done so well recently that I think he could emerge as obviously a leader within this camp. He's shown the leadership attributes when he's played for Canada lately, and I think he's done a really good job. So I really believe he's a player that has been consistently building on kind of good camps and good performances. So this is another one for him to go out there and really take on that mantle as one of the experienced leaders and show Jesse Marsh yet again that he's got a lot to offer. I think he'll be treating this Guatemala game like it's the first game of the World Cup. He's going to be, have that intensity and that attitude as he goes into the match. So, it's a World Cup year. It's a home World Cup. Nobody wants to miss it. Can't even imagine how much, anxiety that's going on in some of these guys' heads if you take out the sort of 10, 15 players that are absolutely nailed on to be in the squad. They're probably neurotic at the minute, thinking about making sure that they're in the Canada squad and they've got a chance to play some minutes in a home World Cup. So they have to come into this with the utmost respect for the game and the camp and the competition that's coming, and show Jesse Marsh that they can't be left off the squad.
We've talked for a long time now about Canadian players heading into the World Cup and their club situations being important. Yeah. And we know it's a big month for Stefan Eustáquio and trying to leave Porto, somewhere where he can go and get minutes. We talked a lot in the fall about Dane St. Clair, where he would end up. It was Miami. Maxime Crépeau, since we last did a pod, he's gone to Orlando, so we can talk about that in a few moments as well. Right now, it's what might happen or might not happen with someone like a Nico Sigur. But one of the early moves in the transfer window, and we talked to Ali Ahmed, and of course he was evasive when we asked him about it when he was on Park the Bus, about how close he was to leaving last summer to go to Europe. He was linked with Germany at the time. Finished the season with the Whitecaps, got to MLS Cup, great season, best club season of his career. In fact, best season of his career for club and country.
Yes.
And then he moves to Norwich City in the English Championship, but in the bottom 3 of the English Championship. Yeah. Both of you guys know what it's like to be there, playing so regularly at that level, especially when you're into a relegation fight. And we've talked in the past about how some players have been negatively affected by going into that sort of a situation where it's not only you and your performances you're thinking about, it's if we go down here, what effect does it have on the team, on the city, on the club? And I've been going back through watching the Sunderland Netflix documentary, Sunderland Till I Die, and I'm just at the end of that first season where they get relegated for the second time in a row, Premier League from to Championship and then down to League One, when Chris Coleman leaves, and they're talking with staff, the people in the kitchen who work for the club, saying, well, we don't know if one of us is going to get fired now because we've got relegated again, that sort of thing. All that pressure is coming onto a player now like Ali Ahmed, because Norwich City, who would expect to be challenging in the top 6 of the Championship, find themselves in the bottom three and find themselves in danger of dropping to League One, which Norwich City would not expect to be in that position. So now Ali Ahmed's put himself into that situation. What do you think of that as a move for him, Kev?
Well, first of all, it's a good club, big club. We know Norwich is a big club, and I think that it's about progression for him, and the Championship is a very, very good move for him. But as Stevie and I have constantly spoke about, when you go to a league that's not necessarily... Look, he's not going to the Premier League, he's not going to one of the top leagues around Europe. I think outside that, the next best is absolutely the Championship. How competitive the Championship is season upon season is... It's so intense.
Is his game right for the Championship?
He does play with that intensity, and I think certainly what Jesse Marsh has brought out in the last year, I think, yes, in answer to that question, yes, he does. But when you're at the bottom of the league, particularly at Championship level, and you're under pressure week in, week out, your natural game doesn't come to the fore an awful lot when you're under pressure.
Survival mode,
It's a survival mode, yes. Don't make a mistake. Get through a game. Once you're in front in a game, keep hold of that lead. And they're expecting him to maybe play a different sort of side of his, or see a sort of side of his game when they maybe get in front in a match. So it's intense pressure, yes, in answer to that, what you're saying as well. It's such intense pressure. Playing for a club that size, that you say they're expected to be top half. Well, not top half.
I think they've got top 5 payroll in the division.
Yeah. They're a huge club in terms of that as well. I think they'll probably still be under the parachute payment. So the budget suggests that they should be a top 6 club, yes. So the way I'd look at it is, great move, but don't underestimate how difficult that league is, particularly at the bottom. And this is where he's at now, where maybe long term we may see a different sort. If we keep talking short term here, we talk about short term fixtures. We're talking about Dane St. Clair going into the right club. Probably has picked the right club in terms of getting himself prepared for the World Cup. This is a huge risk for Ali Ahmed. Absolutely is a huge risk for him with the next 6 months that he's got in his career that's going from now, because he'll be, as I said there before, he'll be judged very quickly. He'll be judged every day at training, and he has to produce now very quickly for Norwich to show the form that we know that he can produce, but playing in that environment it can be toxic when you're at the bottom.
Yeah.
The atmosphere, every time he goes out, playing at home, at times for him, won't be a luxury. It won't be great for him. You'd rather play away from home. And Norwich, over the years, when Norwich have been successful, it's been about home form. They're quite far away from a lot of teams that's based in England. The journey to get there for supporters isn't great. So for them to get that real home form for them, it's about that real togetherness. And it seems at the moment that things aren't quite right. Josh Sargent has said he isn't going to play. We'll maybe come to Josh Sargent in a second. But he said last week he's pulled out of the game over the weekend. And that, again, adds more fuel to the fire that things aren't going quite right for Norwich. And so I think it's a big pressurised situation for him there, Stevie. As I said, Luke's saying there, we both know the league really well, Stevie. It's such a hard league to play in, to get consistency, to win week in, week out. You've played for a really successful Championship club, Stevie, so you know what it's about to play at the top. But playing at the bottom of that league is, I don't know if it's maybe harder than the Premier League, just in terms of the intensity. And a big club like Norwich at the bottom of the Championship are not expected to get relegated, Stevie.
It's gruelling. It really is gruelling, guys. I've played at both sides of that league. I've played in great teams and I've played in really poor teams. And when you're in a poor team, it's just relentless in terms of the game's coming thick and fast, and you know you're not playing well, maybe individually and collectively as a team. And there's just nowhere to hide. It's tough. It's physical. It's demanding. And so I actually respect Ali Ahmed for making the choice to go there, for backing himself and trusting himself to go to a club like Norwich, which is a great club, and I don't think they'll get relegated. And the thing about the Championship as well is it can turn around quickly, where one season can be difficult and then you sign a couple of players, a couple get shipped out, and then the next season you can obviously be successful. So I think if he gets through this first 4 or 5 months and they don't get relegated and he sort of learns what it's all about, then I think it'll stand him in good stead to move forward and hopefully be successful with Norwich. But he's going to find it tough. He's going to think at times, what have I done here? What have I joined? It's going to be completely different football from what he's played, even at international level, definitely within MLS. It's going to be a different style of game. he's going to, I think, struggle a lot with physicality in the early days. He's going to have to work a lot on his strength and try and build that up, because as we know, he's quick and we know he can be relentless in terms of getting up and down the pitch, but he is lightweight and he does get brushed over a lot, and there's a lot of defenders in the Championship that I think in the early days will just deal with Ali Ahmed and give him no joy at all. And so he's going to have to learn how to be effective and to sort of bring parts to his game that allow him to be the best version of himself, the best player that he can be in the yellow of Norwich. But it's a brave move. It's a brave move in a World Cup year, but I actually have a lot of respect for him for taking it. And if things do turn and Norwich start to be the club that we all expect them to be, that we've seen in the past, it's a terrific place to play football, isn't it?
Yeah. I just say off the back of that as well, just in relation to the physicality. I was a left winger stepping up through the divisions. Within a few years of my career, I was then up to Championship level. I'd started out in League Two as it is now. We got promoted in my first season into League One. So within 2 years of my professional career, I was then into the Championship. And what you're saying there, Stevie, about the physicality, it was. I found League 1 and 2 is physical, and I was, I'm 6'1" or whatever. I've a lot different stature to Ali Ahmed, but what I found immediately was the intimidation factor with fullbacks, and I think it has changed in the game. But the fullbacks that were in that Championship when I first got into it it'd be someone like Kevin Muscat, who was at Wolves. I mean, I can't tell you the intimidation factor that these sort of guys had put you through, off the ball stuff, elbows to the head. I mean, and I know it's different now, but the physicality of that league and the fullbacks he's going to be facing are very different from the fullbacks he will be facing in the MLS.
Yeah.
So that is the big point that Stevie's made there that I think he's got to come to terms with quickly.
Yeah, you mentioned that Stoke game that I went to over the holidays, and the amount of times I would say to one of my kids with me, can you imagine if this was MLS? They wouldn't let that go.
Yeah.
And the referee, and I enjoyed the way the referee reffed the game.
Yeah.
I mean, the players maybe didn't, but he just let it go. And the challenges that were coming in the Championship would be penalised in MLS. It was a really rough game.
Yeah.
And that's something that Ali Ahmed's going to have to adjust to
I think
very quickly.
Lower leagues in England is like that. And I think that, the game has changed, absolutely has as well, but you still see that the physicality, particularly Championship, as you say there, you watch a game, anyone would watch a game in the Championship would see how physical it is at times. And it's more, I think that it's something, having watched it, obviously with you guys, watched a lot of the MLS, I think defenders are cleverer in the Championship. I think there'll be a lot more off-the-ball stuff. If they see a striker that's making a run or a winger like Ali Ahmed, they'll stop you before you're able to get momentum. And that will be stepping across you, maybe an arm across your chest or something like that. That is what I think he'll have to come to terms with quickly as well, that he will face a different type of defender that are a little bit cleverer, that have had so much knowledge of how to defend, Stevie. And centre-halves, I think, that play in that league are so good, like maybe yourself, Steve, as well, when you were playing at Burnley and Birmingham, wherever you played at as well, but how they organise players and how they organise fullbacks around them. If Ali Ahmed is getting the better of a fullback, the centre-half generally would be telling him different things to how to stop him before he gets onto the ball, get up tight against him as the ball's in flight. I think this is a sort of thing that he won't be familiar with immediately off the bat, Stevie.
Yeah, I agree, Kev. And I think physically, we mentioned a lot about the physicality. Obviously, defenders will get tight and they'll have their arms on them and they won't be able to wriggle free. And then I think positionally as well. I mean, some of the games that we watched that last season there, where the Whitecaps were obviously a good team on the ball, and Ali Ahmed was allowed to kind of hang out on the left, fullbacks tucking in, and then getting the chance to get some speed up and run at players 15, 20 yards to get ahead of the steam. That's not going to happen, is it?
No.
There's going to be a winger that's in front of him. There's going to be a fullback that knows where he is positionally. These guys in the Championship are really astute. They know what they're doing. Teams are well coached and they're pragmatic in a lot of senses in the way that they play the game. That's not what we see in MLS. We see more of an idealistic, kind of free-flowing game where both sides are allowed to play. There's very few Championship sides that allow you to play. So these are the things that he's got to work out. But as I said, that's why he's went there, isn't it? To improve his game and to take it to the next level. So I've no doubt he'll come up with solutions, but it's going to be very difficult. I think he's going to have some really tough games in the beginning, and you just hope that the club and the manager stick with him and give him that time to learn and to grow and to improve, so he can be the player that they've hoped that they've signed. Not an easy thing to allow when you're at the bottom of the league as well, when you need wins, and you might have to put a guy in there that you know doesn't have the talent of Ali Ahmed, but is a bit more reliable, more and experience within that league. So he's got a right battle on his hands, Kev, hasn't he? He's going to have a tough little period here. I think it's fascinating to watch this and see how he copes with it. We'll learn a lot about his mentality and his psyche, let's call it, in terms of how he can cope with this league and how he can improve and how quickly he can be up and running and to be in a major league like the Championship.
I think we've learned a lot about his mentality already by just making this move.
Yeah.
Because, as I've said in the past, I'm like, take the safest road whenever possible. Just take whatever's the safest, whatever's the least,
Stay with the White
amount of trouble. I would have stayed with the White. You know what I mean? That's why I'm not an athlete getting, the big moves.
No, but a lot of players do that though, Luke, as well. They take the easy path. That's natural. So it's a risky move, and Stevie touched on it before as well. He admires him for doing it.
It's brave.
I do. Very brave. Great. It's a great move for him, and it's a great club.
And it would maybe have been less risky to take a move to the Bundesliga or the top of the second tier, as it was going to be last summer. And probably it would have been the second tier in Germany.
Yeah.
Rather than going into the heat of a battle in the Championship in England. But he's put his hand up and said, I can deal with this. We know what he's been through in the past, where he's not had a conventional route to get to where he got to with the Whitecaps, having been a Toronto boy and ended up all the way over in Vancouver via various different places that he went to.
Yeah.
So he's obviously not afraid of a challenge, and it'd be great to see what happens with Ali Ahmed moving forward. But he's gone to Norwich to try and progress his career and get ready for a World Cup. Apparently, according to reports, Josh Sargent, who is probably right now on the outside of the US squad looking in, although Ricardo Pepi has now got an injury that could mean that he's in doubt moving forward, another of Maurizio Pochettino's starting strikers. So Josh Sargent has been banging the goals for Norwich. And
has he been banging them in?
Well, in the Championship level, he's got a good record.
I think it's about 8 goals this season.
That's not a bad record, is it? I would take an 8-goal striker at Christmas.
1 and 3. 150 appearances roughly. He's got about 50 goals. He's got 1 and 3 ratio.
7 goals.
That's not bad, is it? But I don't know if it's $18 million worth, which is...
Championship, let's be a Championship now, you've got to be getting 25 to 30. That's, if I'm looking back in the last 10 years...
There aren't many 25 to 30 goal scorers in a Championship season.
There's been a lot.
Each year.
Each year, yeah, definitely.
Might get 1 or 2.
You'll see a striker most seasons that get at least 20 goals. At least 20 goals. You've got to be... If you're considered a 10 million plus striker in the Championship, you've got to get 20 goals.
OK, well, just putting it into context as to why we're talking about Josh Sargent, is the report is that Toronto FC have bid $18 million to try and bring him back to North America, to MLS. He's a US international. He's been at Norwich for a little while now. Like I said, I don't think right now he's probably, if you said today, who's Maurizio Pochettino's World Cup squad, he's not in it. But, Stevie, Toronto FC needs a striker. Absolutely, 100%. I think Josh Sargent, there's not much doubt, would come in and improve Toronto FC on where they were this time last year. But are there other things you can do with $18 million rather than bring in Josh Sargent as you're constructing a squad and a roster and a club as a whole, especially when we've talked about the flexibility that they've got right now in terms of building this squad? And secondly, you mentioned it with Philippe Clement, the Norwich manager, coming out and saying Josh Sargent texted him the night before the game and said, I can't play because of transfer stuff. It's not a great look, is it, Stevie?
No, I don't like it, but it's the modern player, isn't it? We've hammered Isaac for it. There's been others. Wessa went the other way. Brentford 2, Newcastle did the same thing.
Stevie, I'll stop you on that one. Antoine Semenyo was reportedly going to City and has now moved to City. £60 million, $80 million, $90 million, whatever it was. He played the last game and scored the winner for Bournemouth before his send-off. That, to me, showed how it should be done.
And did you see what he did the following morning? After the transfer, he took a full-page advert out in the Bournemouth Echo with him in his Bournemouth jersey saying thank you to the Bournemouth fans.
Amazing.
Right? That's the way to do it.
Yes.
Right? But, I mean, different things for different people, different characters. But go on, carry on about Sargent, Stevie.
Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, so, I mean, I'm not so shocked that he did what he did in terms of the text. I don't like it. I'm a traditionalist. I just don't think you should. It's really disrespectful to the club that you're at, that you're saying you don't want to play because your head's not in the right place. You're a professional athlete. You're supposed to, you get paid to play. You go out there and you play in any kind of scenario, and you got to be focused on the game. So that was weird to me. I almost fell off my chair when I saw $18 million. I have to say, that is a lot of money for Josh Sargent. It's a huge surprise for me that TFC, after the big expensive mistakes of Federico Bernardeschi and Lorenzo Insigne, are going to spend that kind of money on a transfer, and then I mean, we're talking what, $6, $7, $8 million a year, I'm sure, in terms of wages, to prize him away from European football to come back to MLS. So the deal itself is enormous, and it really is a statement of intent from Jason Hernandez and Robin Fraser. This is eventually putting their eggs into the basket of Jordan Mihailovic and Josh Sargent. Two expensive signings, two signings that they've probably pinpointed as keys to success, playoff success, and then indeed having a challenge for MLS Cup. And if it doesn't work, then I think they're going to have to pay the price. There's going to be some real pressure on them if these players are not as successful as they hope that they're going to be. So they've went for it. They've decided it seems like he's their guy. I think it will probably get over the line if it is, if reports are to be believed and they're that keen on Josh Sargent. But I think, yet again, they both have paid for him carefully.
I mean, to me personally, I think, yes, a lot of money, first off the bat. I don't think he's got a record. You mentioned that 1 in 3 record. You know, if you've got a 1 in 3 record, you probably think that might improve if he were to move to the MLS. But it's not a given. It's such a hard league to come to in terms of getting chances anyway.
The one thing in Josh Sargent's favour is that he's American.
Yes.
Right, as he comes back. I'm thinking of someone like Latte Lat, who went to Atlanta. I think it was over $20 million that they paid for him, and he scored 7 goals last season in Major League Soccer. You can't pay $20 million for anyone and only get 7 goals. And he'd been banging them in the Championship for Middlesbrough. But he didn't know Major League Soccer, so there's maybe a little bit more comfortable. You know,
I'd maybe agree with that. But then you look at exactly Sam Surridge. He was obviously at Nashville, wasn't he? And scored. He was up there with Messi, wasn't he? I don't know. He got over 20 this season anyway, or last season. So he's another one that came out of a similar standard to that as well. I mean, any transfer is a risk. We know that. But I've watched Josh Sargent an awful lot, and to me personally, I think there's a lot to admire about his game, his work rate that he brings. But that sort of money. It's 20 goals, isn't it? That's what you've got to,
You've 24 goals for Sam Surridge last season. If you pay $18 million for a striker, it's got to be 20 goals.
It has to be 20 goals. Particularly for a team like Toronto, where TFC have been in the last few years. We've constantly said they need a striker. Now, could you use that money a little bit more wisely, like you were suggesting maybe at the outset? Could you maybe go and try to get perhaps an older player to come in that's still got a lot to give, yet...
Although they've done that.
Free transfer. Yeah, I know that. I know that, but I do...
Mind you, Toronto FC have done everything.
Yeah, I know.
A lot of times when it hasn't worked.
I know. Well, but that suggests to me there's greater problems there rather than just a player that you're going to get in. Personnel, it might not necessarily be an individual coming in. An individual's coming into an environment that's not been working. So it's the whole environment that needs to be fixed before you're actually concentrating on getting your DP. And look, if Sargent goes in there and Sargent, as I said before, I think there's a lot to admire about the game. A good player, but he's not proven throughout his career that he's a regular, at least a 1 in 2 guy for goals.
Just while we're on Toronto FC, Stevie, it seems now as if, they could have made a play for St. Clair or Maxime Crépeau, who's gone to Orlando and had a Canadian international starting goalkeeper there to replace Sean Johnson, who's gone, and I think Sean Johnson moved to DC. Seems like they're going with Luca Gavron. Who is in the Canada camp right now.
Yeah.
Is he a starting keeper, Stevie? And if he is a starting keeper for TFC and does well, is that third spot still up for grabs? Could Luca Gavron get to the World Cup for Canada as the third keeper? Bearing in mind he's also, you talk about an Owen Goodman, but also a James Pantemis is going to be a number one now as well in Portland, as he was last year. Now that Crépeau's gone, he'll be getting the starts there as well. What do you make of Gavran and the fact that he's now coming through to probably being the first choice for TFC?
Yeah, he is going to get that opportunity. He's going to get the chance to prove that he is capable of being a number one. The honesty is the jury's still out on that. We've not seen enough. There's glimpses of a decent keeper there, in my opinion, but I don't think that I've seen enough to say that he has the stature, the confidence, and the goalkeeper ability to carry TFC as a number one and be the man that can sort of replace a guy like Sean Johnson. As we know, Sean Johnson's performances were going downhill a little bit because of the age he was at in his career. But I'm a little shocked again that they've given Gavran that role. Really, they never went out there and got a Crépeau or somebody else to challenge him, almost like a 1A and a 1B. What we've spoke about before, it's like they wanted to show to Gavran that they believed in him, and they've allowed him the chance to prove that he can be a number one. Now, what does he need to do? He's got to be confident. He has to play with his chest out a little bit. He's had some high-profile mistakes for TFC in a limited number of games, and he's got to eradicate that from his game. He has to be, I think, way more consistent and solid and reliable, let's call it. But I do think there's a decent keeper there. And when you look at it like that, and you think about that third choice for Canada, it is wide open. It could really go to anybody because there's a bunch of keepers that I think are much the same quality. And I think, again, it's just more around, is he a good fit? Is he a good third choice keeper? Does he understand his role at this World Cup? More than likely, not going to play a minute. It's going to be a good training player. It's going to be available for the goalkeepers to support the two goalkeepers that might fight it out for the starting role, and also be available for the other players to be that support, whether it's shooting or crossing and finishing or whatever it may be. So I think personality will come into it a lot, and I do think that Luka Gavran becoming TFC's number one puts him right in the shout to potentially be that third choice goalkeeper.
Big move for Maxime Crépeau to go to Orlando as well. I mean, Pedro Galese has been there for so long, Peruvian international keeper. Big shoes to fill for him, almost like when we talk about Gavran coming in, although Maxime Crépeau obviously a lot more experience, but Crépeau's going in there to Orlando to take over from someone who has been a long time starting goalkeeper at a very high level in Major League Soccer, Pedro Galese. But I mean, if you talked back in November time, even when Dane Sinclair was in on Park the Bus, and we'd said, you know, fast forward 2 months, Dane Sinclair will be at Miami, Maxime Crépeau will be in Orlando, big Florida battle between the two Canadian who are vying for that number one spot. Does Crépeau going there to Orlando and being the number one keeper in Orlando close the gap on Dane Sinclair in terms of the national team?
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I still feel somewhere in Jesse Marsch's mind, he's made that decision, but he wants to try to keep that competition or keep it as competitive as possible until that March window. But yeah, in answer to that, I think it has to, because
more so than if he's the backup in Portland.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the backup, and it just didn't work out for him at Portland. It didn't work out for him. Even when he was getting the starts, he was making mistakes, some high-profile mistakes. So I think it's a fresh start for him. And Stevie and I have constantly spoke about this. Sometimes you go to a club, it just doesn't work out, and you need to get away almost as quickly as possible then. And this has maybe taken a little bit longer than he would have liked, but now he does become that number one. It may close the gap, Luke, but I think in Jesse Marsch's mind, I feel as though he has made that decision. But it's just more so for the mentality of both goalkeepers. I think that he's keeping this decision, or he's going to wait until to make this decision until March time. That's the only thing. Just in relation to quickly on that one on Gavran replacing Sean Johnson, I think that is actually good business for TFC. Now, I think the jury is out. I agree with Stevie. We've not seen enough of him. But I think they were overpaying for a goalkeeper, in my opinion, who wasn't good enough. That's the way I felt on the Sean Johnson situation. So they've obviously
Let us know when there is a keeper that is
creative bonus. No, but I mean, you have to be honest. But you've got to be honest about that. They were overpaying for a goalkeeper that wasn't producing consistently, I don't think. I think he had a decent enough season last year, but to pay the amount of money they paid for him, I think it was way too much personally. So that's the way I saw that one. So I'm not saying that Luka Gavran is going to be the total answer long term, but I think it definitely frees up the budget or frees up money within that budget to go and get better personnel elsewhere.
Stevie joining us from Naples, where he's on his world travels right now, having been to Paris, to Newcastle, to Glasgow in this recent trip. For a series called Game and Glory, is it, Stevie?
Game and Glory.
TSN in a few months' time.
Yeah.
But you were actually, I felt so sorry for Wilfred Nancy and what happened at Celtic. But at the end of the day, so much went wrong. And then you see the impact Martin O'Neill's had when he's come back in.
Yeah, I know.
But you were there for Rangers Celtic. That was one of the many games you went to on your travels this time around. We talked earlier about seeing Tejan and Tani at the Villarreal game, but you were at Newcastle Leeds. What a game that was, by the way. Newcastle against
Great
Leeds.
Game.
You were at the Old Firm derby. You went to Paris FC at PSG as well.
Yeah. The Old Firm was probably the worst match, I have to say. I didn't enjoy that in the slightest, not because I'm a Celtic fan, but because it was just poor quality and a toxic atmosphere inside that stadium. It's the worst I've ever seen an Old Firm game in terms of atmosphere. And Celtic fans were quiet, they were anxious, they were apprehensive. The away Rangers fans, and they've just started to allow a little bit more away fans back into the Old Firm after a few years of being away, and because of trouble not allowing away fans. They were really poor as well until they scored and they got a little bit going, and they felt like they were going to come away with the 3 points, which they did. So I found it really strange. It was a weird game in general, and the quality of both teams. I can't remember watching an Old Firm game where Celtic and Rangers were as bad as these teams were on January 3rd. So that was a weird one. I mentioned to you guys that PSG, for me, are still the best side in the world. I don't think there's any team that can they lose in a one-off game? Obviously, absolutely. But I think overall, consistency-wise, PSG are the best team in the world. Their movement, the way that they keep the ball, their defensive football in terms of penning the team in and not allowing them out and not giving them any passes to kind of build anything up was exceptional. I've never seen a team like it. So I really enjoyed that one. Seeing the guys in Villarreal was good as well. So we've had a right little tour. I'm excited to go to, what is it they call it, Kev? Is it the Diego Maradona Stadium?
Yeah.
I'm really excited for Naples.
There's a couple of things I want to come to you on that one there now before. I'll talk to you a little bit about PSG. PSG are not the best team in the world, Stevie, because Chelsea proved it in the Club World Championship, of course. I know I wanted to. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on PSG, but just going back to Celtic thing with Wilfred Nancy that Luke touched on here, and in relation to North American coaches. I know Wilfred Nancy's French, but established himself in North America.
Been here over a decade,
yes.
Montreal, and then,
And there was huge defence across the MLS, within media, within certain circles, defending Wilfred Nancy and how he approached that job and give him time. I was probably in that bracket to an extent that you need time. He needed time to really firmly establish himself, to really implement, or before he's going to implement his ideas. How damaging, Stevie, is it with what's happened with Wilfred Nancy at Celtic for North American coaches now if they're to go to Europe?
Very, very damaging. I do think that there'll be a severe lack of trust in North American coaches going over to Europe. I think I'll start with the interview process. I would love to be a fly in the wall or to see who was in the room as Wilfred Nancy and others were interviewed and what questions were asked of the coach in terms of preparing him or understanding, is he ready to coach Celtic Football Club at that moment. I can only assume that the chat was all about, methodology and strategy and tactics and all the stuff that the modern coach talks about, Kev. But does any of that actually matter if you don't understand the essence of a football club, if you don't understand what the people are like, what the history of that club's like, the type of football that club's played in the past, the success that has came for over 100 years from this team playing a certain way and having a certain kind of style or sort of way of playing. To me, it's madness that they went with a coach like Wilfred Nancy. And it's easy to say in hindsight, but I felt it at the time as well. To give Nancy the job at this time at Celtic, understanding that he was coming mid-season, understanding that he likes to play 3-4-3, 3-box-3, understanding that Celtic don't have the players to play that formation or don't necessarily have the quality of players that they've had in teams in the past. And when I say in the past, I mean 1, 2, 3 years ago. I'm not talking about Henrik Larsson or the Lisbon Lions or anything like that. So I think an absolute disaster by Celtic Football Club. Wilfred Nancy did not do himself justice. That's absolutely for certain. But I don't think that Wilfred Nancy respected the role. I don't think Wilfred Nancy put enough time, care and attention into the other things around the game, that not just what happens on the training field or on the pitch on a Saturday or a Wednesday night. And he's left with the tail between his legs, and he'll probably end up back in MLS and he'll do well, but I don't think he's going to get another chance in Europe after how badly that went at Celtic Football Club.
I mean, a lot went against him. Yeah, and he's made errors. We talked before Christmas about the errors that he has made himself. Even when you get Martin O'Neill coming out on his TalkSport, he goes on once a week usually on TalkSport with Jim White and Simon Jordan, and you get him, and they say to him, "Did Wilfred Nancy ask to speak to you?" Yeah, and he said, "No, we spoke for 5 minutes on the way out, and that was it. There was not really anything like even something like that." Yeah. The fact that then people are saying, "Well, why didn't he want to listen to Martin O'Neill and what he had to say about?"
Given what he's achieved at Celtic, going back, I know this was short-term.
So there were missteps along the way, but that first week that he had in charge, that ended with the cup defeat in the final and had Roma in the middle. It's like when Martin O'Neill is on that run, there was no need to do what they did right then from a Celtic perspective. But Wilfred Nancy went straight in, not to a team that was on the down, but a team that was actually getting results, whether it was playing the right way or not. So that was going against him from the start, because the Celtic fans would have been quite happy if Martin O'Neill had just taken that week and tried to win a cup.
And just touching on what Stevie said, maybe the interview process and everything that maybe was said by Wilfred Nancy in the opening week or two that he was involved, I think that respect for the club, you didn't need to make huge statements, but recognising what that club was all about, the history of that club. It wouldn't have taken very long to read a couple of things around Celtic and the history of that club and what it means to the people, what it means to... Look, you can argue around the size of Celtic, but there are very few teams around the world that would be recognised like Celtic. I know that the Scottish League is not as good as it maybe was 30, 40 years ago, wherever it would be, and Celtic and Rangers haven't been seriously competitive in the Champions League. But Celtic is such a huge club. It's more than a club, it's more than a team, and that's the way that it is. And I don't think Wilfred Nancy came to terms with that. And I was one, Stevie, in fairness to you, you were right, and you've turned out right what you were saying around the appointment and how you feel as though it wouldn't work out. I felt as though Nancy, it might have been the next step for him. But the things he was saying, I was just thinking, like even post-match interviews, talking around things that the Celtic fans, you know what football's like. You know how they were taking some of the things he was saying. And I was just
thinking, even the first, whether you think that the tactic sport is something that can be used during game or not, in game one, when things are going wrong and you're sitting there and then all the memes that come out, it just didn't work for Wilfred Nancy.
Yeah, there was talk around how he was, there was a report, I think, in The Athletic that came out where he was talking about how he was showing players how to take the first touch. People like James Forrest, who'd been at the club. James Forrest has won everything, one of the most decorated players in Celtic's history. And he was almost making him look foolish in front of the group, I
don't think it was The Athletic. I think it was a Scottish newspaper.
Was it?
You know who else was quoted in that article?
Who was that?
Stephen Caldwell.
Stephen Caldwell.
Scottish international legend, I think it was. Was it Scottish legend Stephen
I
Caldwell?
don't think so.
Quite
or was
right.
Was it
I don't
Gary
think so.
Caldwell's brother, Stephen?
Oh, come on.
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all.
You were, though, in that. They asked you to talk about Wilfred Nancy.
Yeah, and it's a guy I've known for a while, Stephen McGowan, a great journalist, and he sort of called me up and asked me if I wanted to talk, and actually I did feel sorry for Wilfred Nancy as well, and I definitely didn't want to be one of the people putting the boot into him at a time when he's probably at his most vulnerable. But I agree with Kev, he just made too many unbelievable errors. So, as I said to Stephen when I spoke to him, I'd rather focus on kind of the learnings, let's call it, for Wilfred Nancy and for others, because this is a great opportunity, guys, for everyone. I'm talking like UEFA coaching licenses. I'm talking about future coaches, even current coaches, whether they're in North America, they're in Europe, or wherever they are in Scotland. There's such a space to learn here in terms of what is actually important when you're a coach of a football club. What is the day-to-day stuff that you have to get right if you're going to get the time to sort of build a team and the personality or the sort of profile of what you want it to be. And I think that's really important that young coaches recognise that you have to understand the people that are paying their money to come and watch your team play. You have to understand the culture and the history of the club, and you also have to understand the country that you're coming to as well. And I think that's where Wilfred made his biggest mistakes. I think one of his first interviews, he said something like, "It's not about winning and losing." Yeah. And as he said that, I understood what he was meaning in terms of the process that he was trying to build to create a club that can consistently be high performance. You just don't say that, guys. It is about winning. It's only about winning when you're manager of Celtic.
He might have had a different chance if it was July.
Yeah.
If it was a pre-season, you've got the whole of the pre-season to bed in. You're not dropping in mid-season. You've got a transfer window that's open as well. Yeah. You can more talk about during pre-season. It's not about the results in pre-season. It's about the performances and where we're going to. But to drop in mid-season just was... Talking about dropping in mid-season and MLS... Eric Ramsey's left Minnesota to go to West Brom in the Championship now. Now, he's not really... He's been the last couple of years and got success in MLS, but he's from England anyway, Manchester United, coaching background there. So that's a different scenario, but he's going the other way in terms of having come over to Major League Soccer to get more experience and then going back to Europe to get a head coaching job there. So it'd be interesting to see how he does at West Brom. Just been told Xabi Alonso has been fired at Real Madrid.
Wow. I watched a bit of the game against Barcelona, which was is it the King's Cup? I think they call it. I think it was played in Saudi Arabia.
The Super Cup.
Super Cup. Yeah, it was. It had everything actually. The game. It was a good game, and obviously Barcelona win the game and things like that, and. Alonso's been under a lot of pressure, hasn't he, the last few weeks. It's amazing the way that they went. I think they lost to, was it Liverpool beat them in the Champions League? Man City beat them as well. I mean, they've not been great in the Champions League, but they're still right up there at the top of the league. They'll be there or thereabouts. But it's amazing the level, isn't it, what it is. Xabi Alonso's had so much success. He's gone in there.
It counts for nothing.
It was expected to be, this was going to be an appointment for 5 years. Clubs don't look at 5-year plans, essentially. They'll try to have one, but if you're not winning, as Stevie touched on there, clubs the size of Real Madrid, Celtic, wherever it is in the league that they're in, it's about winning, that's it.
And Mikel Arteta has had that time at Arsenal when they could have made changes.
Absolutely.
And now it's taken 6 years and you see where they are now, Stevie. And even when Liam Rosinha, who's come in now from Strasbourg to Chelsea, has been given, I think it's a 6-year contract. In 2032 he's got the contract to, which is a Chelsea manager, it's more like 32 weeks than 2032. But he's talking about, styling on... a class of 92 from what Sir Alex Ferguson did at Old Trafford with Chelsea's young players, the time that Mikel Arteta's had. At some point, you need a club to stick by their decision and say, if this was the guy 6 months ago, he's the guy now. And certainly from Liam Rosinha's point of view at Chelsea, with the managerial change they've had, they need to say, he's good enough for us now. These are the reasons we've picked him. We're going to give him time. But Xabi Alonso, 6 months down the road, Stevie, to be gone is... You wouldn't have...
They couldn't have predicted that.
You couldn't have thought in July at the Club World Cup when he's taking over there, you would not have expected that would be it for him, having had such success and the ties to the club. And it almost seemed like it was the perfect appointment.
Yeah, it was in many ways. And, he created one of the greatest Leverkusen teams in history, a team that nearly went an entire season without losing a game. They were unbelievable, and he was the hottest coach in the world. Everybody wanted him. Yeah. And it just shows you what a ruthless, cutthroat professional management is. It is so hard, guys, so hard. And just because you get the formula for success in one place, it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful in that next environment. And I just think, when you look at some of the names and some of the people that have failed, whether it's Real Madrid or Celtic or Manchester United, a lot of guys getting absolutely hammered as Man United managers. Guys that, again, had Ruben Amorim, a tremendous sporting team that everyone loved watching and felt like the style of play was absolutely amazing. He goes and tries it at a place like Old Trafford and it doesn't work in the slightest. The key here is, though, guys, you must please the fans, because whether you get a 6-year deal or a 6 month deal, whether you're on 20 million pair or whatever it is, once the fans turn and once the board of directors start to see that the supporters base wants this guy out, he's gone. It doesn't matter what he's due in terms of money or how they can get out of that contract. They sack the guy and they move on and they go to the next one. So it shows you the kind of power that the supporters have within the biggest clubs in the world. They really dictate what happens to coaches. So I think, again, I'll go back to my kind of learning point for this whole thing. It's like the learning is, as a young coach, what is important? How do you go in there and integrate yourself and understand the club right away and sort of try and sort of bring some kind of winning football and then create a foundation that you can build on and maybe get a style or a way of playing that is in with your DNA. So it's really hard. I mean, you guys say that a guy like Alonso, he played there. It's not like he doesn't know Real Madrid. He knows the club as well as anybody, and yet he couldn't get success because he didn't get the results.
You know who else it puts some pressure on now? Maybe Arne Slot. There'll be a few Liverpool fans thinking Xabi Alonso's available, and if it doesn't turn around, so although Liverpool's steadied things a little bit now.
Zidane back to Real Madrid, would you think?
Who knows? Yeah. Who knows? You talk about learning experiences, Stevie, for coaches. I'm sure you've spoken to your brother. 10-1, Manchester City against Exeter at the weekend in the FA Cup. By the way, the greatest cup competition in the world. 117 places separating.
I'm glad you mentioned
Crystal Palace, the holders of the FA Cup, and National League North side Macclesfield in the 6th tier, a club that 5 years ago went out of business. They've been brought back. John Rooney, the brother of Wayne Rooney, is the manager of Macclesfield. They went and they beat Crystal Palace by 2-1. I watched the whole game. It was incredible.
I only saw the highlights.
Incredible.
Of it,
and everything around that game. Dawson, the captain, scoring with the headband. He was magnificent. They played on a turf pitch. And interesting comments from Dawson, the captain, on one of the radio stations today, saying that he'd gone in before the game. I think it was the team sheet swap with Francis Jeffers, the assistant coach. And Mark Gahey was there. And someone said to Mark Gahey at the time, "Welcome to Macclesfield. Do you like it? Do you like the pitch?" He's like, "It's not for me." He said, "It's not." And Dawson went back in, Stevie, went back into the locker room and said, "I know we're 117 places below these guys, but they don't fancy it. We can go out there and we can do something today again." To be able to, and then they got one back near the end to make it 2-1, and you're thinking, oh, here we go, the story's done. But they held on, and just incredible competition, Stevie.
Incredible, isn't it? I mean, Kev and I are lucky enough to have played in it at different points and probably been on the end of a bit of a giant killing game, and in the opposite side where we've lost to a lower league team as well, and it's just an unbelievable tournament. It's got the magic in it, isn't it? And we get these stories every single year where one of the minnows goes and gets a result against one of the big boys. So, I mean, the psychology of football is amazing, isn't it? It really is. like anything is possible in this game if you can kind of buy into something, or you can get a little bit of luck, and you sort of become just this unstoppable force on any given day. It's unbelievable, and I think the FA Cup highlights that better than any other competition. It's just amazing to see, and I think, go back to my brother, obviously speaking to him a lot before and kind of after the game. The experience for players like Exeter, sort of getting there a couple of days earlier into the Northwest, and guys picked up the phone, Darren Fletcher, and Darren gracefully opened the doors at Carrington and allowed Exeter to go train at Manchester United the day before the game and get to kind of rub shoulders with some of the guys, Bruno Fernandes, and the players kind of came by and shook their hands, and then to the stadium the day before and the night before, and having a look at the Etihad before they were to go out there and play the game. I think the whole experience allows lower league players to see just what it takes to be successful at that level, and you can only have admiration for these top players who go 60, 70 games a year playing at the highest level. And the last story I'll tell, guys, is when he shared a drink with Pep Guardiola after the game. Guardiola said to my brother, the way we respect you is actually by going out and beating you 10-1, by playing at our highest level and treating this game like it's a knockout Champions League game. And that is our mark of respect for what you do as a coach, what you are as a club. And so please don't see it as kind of disrespect. I thought that was really cool. It was like, you're going to get the best version of us. Obviously, he's got about 25 players to pick from. Great changes. But he's told the guys to go out there and treat Exeter with respect and give them the full Monty when it comes to how good they can be. And, well, they did that 10-1. But I think Exeter are going to take that experience and be rubbing shoulders with the kind of players, being in close quarters to that standard of player, and try and take a little bit of what they have and obviously take it into their season and make sure they stay in League One again for another season, which would be remarkable with the budget that they've got.
Yeah. It's just interesting he touched on that, though, about the psychology of it all. Look, I remember when I would have played, I wasn't really on the end of a huge giant killing. I think maybe once or twice we lost to a division below us or something. No major shock, to be honest with you. And I always felt, when certainly maybe playing Premier League level, or we're playing against a second or third tier team, or maybe even below that, you know that, and it's always the message that would have said to us when I was a boy, is like, you've got to earn the right to play. It's not just about going out, getting your first touch right, passing forward, all these sort of things. It's about running harder than the other man that you're up against. And if you get that right, the quality will take care of itself. But that is an essential that you need to get right at the start of the game to get through.
Well, it's interesting that Gahey said that about the fact that it's not for me when he gets into that sort of situation, and that they fed off that, right? You go back straight into the locker room and said, by the way, this guy's...
And you would. That's exactly what you would do. Yeah. I've been on, again, coming up at Preston as a kid, when we were playing against Premier League sides, whether that been in the FA Cup or the League Cup at the time. I remember we played against Tottenham when we were a League One side, maybe even a League Two side, I'm not too sure. And we played against Tottenham, and Tottenham came to Deepdale, and they had Teddy Sheringham playing, Sol Campbell, Darren Anderton, who were England internationals at that time. And we actually gave them a good game at Deepdale. We went down to White Hart Lane, it was a two-legged game, and I think they beat us 4-5. Yeah. And it was their attitude that was right on the day. We were all... the emotion of the game at home, and we put in a good performance. I think we got a draw or something, wherever it was, and I felt as though I'd done really well. I felt as though I got a bit more time on the ball playing against Premier League opposition. When we went down on there, they just beat us, and they just did us, and that is what it's about. It's like Gahey's saying that maybe shows me, and that being open knowledge now.
That showed, by the way, on the performance.
Yes, it does, and it shows me something though, Luke, as well now, that there's got to be a question mark over Gahey and the attitude that he's got. If you're going to sign him, if he's going to leave Crystal Palace because he's out of contract next summer, it just shows me a few little things anyway. But
one last thing on the Exeter City game, Stevie. The goal that they scored was a great strike. That's something that is going to go, be remembered forever. But the other thing is, Gaz managed to keep Haaland quiet.
Yeah, you lose 10-1 and Erling Haaland doesn't even get one of the goals. You'd never have put a bet on that, would you? I think he also said that he's never celebrated a goal at 9-1 like that in his life before, because it was such a great moment. The youngster scoring a terrific goal. Interestingly, as Kev's speaking there, I'm kind of listening in, and Guardiola's little bit of advice for Gary was, just I tell my players every day just to run hard, run as much as you can. He said there's only one player in the world that's allowed not to run, and that's Lionel Messi. He's the only player that can stand. So, when you're telling guys like Reinders and Foden and Haaland and Rodri and these guys, you got to run, then it shows you that it is a vital component of football. We know that, but I don't think we kind of stress enough how important it is to have that physicality, to just go and go and go against your opponent. And then when you think about football, and it's interesting, this whole show today, guys, has been about managers and tactics and methodology and that. It's really just a series of individual battles between players, like, can you win your battle against your centre forward if you're a centre back? Can you win your battle in the midfield? Can you run past them and get back? And it is actually a simple game when you boil it all down, and it usually comes down to commitment and endeavour. And we've seen that with the FA Cup, that if a team can show that commitment and that endeavour and can be a little bit better than an opponent, then even when they're 117 places or whatever it was apart, they can win the game. It's unbelievable. That's why we love it.
We better wrap it up soon, because Stevie's got pizzas to eat in Naples. And it doesn't look...
I'll send you a picture.
Looks a little bit of a bare sort of hotel room there. There's not a lot going on in you. Are you in the washroom there, or is it that's a room?
It's like I'm in a hostel here, guys. It's actually a cute little hotel, but the room is very basic.
Don't bang your head.
I'm not going to stay here too long. I'm going to get out and I'm off the beer, Kev. I'm off the beer in 2026, so I'll go have a nice glass of red wine and slice of pizza.
What's the point in staying off beer if you're going to stick on wine? You might as well just come off it permanently.
No, but before we go, though, quite a big topic to finish with, actually. And I don't think you'll have had time to watch the movie so far, but Saipan, the movie, has been released. Kev's had the opportunity to watch it and destroy it in his Irish Times column, which we were all able to read on social media before he got an angry call from the Irish Times editor to say, would you mind taking this down, because I'd rather people buy the paper.
Yeah, my mistake, that. Yeah, I had to take that down urgently enough. Yeah, I
don't think that this is going to come as a shock to anybody, but I love this guy, Kevin Kilbane. He is a proper man. And that article was one of the best things that I've read in a long time, because, I know it's based on a true story. It's a fictional movie, but, some of the things that were in this movie, I've not had the chance to see it yet, but going on Kev's review about players like Niall Quinn and some of the inaccuracies, I think need to be brought up. And who better than a guy that was actually there and could feel Roy Keane's spit and breath on his shoulder? He was that close to the argument to put a few of the wrongs to right. So good on you, Kev. What a guy. I love
Stevie,
so what was wrong with it?
Well, it seems very strange that there's a movie being made around it all to start with.
It's a good story. It is a good story.
Over here in Canada, people will not be aware of the story whatsoever. But the only way I can describe it is that probably everyone in North America, particularly even south of the border here, but certainly Canadians, have got what we would call a JFK moment. Everybody knows it was before I was born and before you were born, Luke. But everyone that's from that era remembers where they were when JFK was killed. Maybe whatever news story. That was the Irish JFK moment. Everybody remembers where they were when they heard about what happened with Roy Keane and Mick McCarthy in Saipan. It was such a huge news story that dominated our World Cup.
And he left the World Cup camp.
The World Cup a week, 10 days or whatever it was before our first game against Cameroon. Obviously, one of the very best in the world at that particular time, captain of Man United. Did so much for us to get to the World Cup as well. It wasn't only about Roy, I have to say that. We had, two generational talents in Robbie Keane and Damien Duff. One of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League at that particular time, Shea Given. So we weren't certainly a one-man team. It helped us having him. I don't know part of it. I'm certainly not on those guys' level. But I think if you look at it overall, there was so much said around it that Look, it starts off, and somebody who I have got an enormous amount of respect for, one of Stevie's old coach, is Mick McCarthy. And obviously he's a big part to play in the movie. But it makes Mick McCarthy look like he's some bumbling mess of a man that couldn't get his words out in team meetings, that couldn't engage with people properly. And Stevie knows this more than anyone. Mick McCarthy was very clear in the message that he wants from you. Mick McCarthy was strong-minded, he was strong-willed, an incredible character, captain of Ireland in 2 major tournaments. A huge legend of Irish football, and they turned him into a bumbling mess. I don't think his wife came across well in it as well. And the little things like this when the movie started off, I knew from the start of it this wasn't going to go well in terms of how the plot was going to be written. I found it quite funny how they showed us. I know we have a laugh about going out and having a drink, but honestly, we had so many of our players did not touch alcohol. A lot of the Irish team would go out. We might get one night out on a trip. The drinking culture within Irish football, within football in general, had changed once Arsene Wenger came into English football around 95, whatever it was, 96. The whole culture of professional football changed. And I was lucky that when I first became professional, that I would never have gone out the night before training. It just wouldn't happen. So all these sort of things that were being thrown around us. Stevie mentioned there Niall Quinn. Virtually every scene that Niall Quinn's in, Niall Quinn is walking around team meetings with a bottle of beer in his hand. These sort of things that don't reflect well on anybody. So there was a lot to be said, but the biggest talking point of the movie was around how Mick McCarthy was called English. He was called English. Now, there was choice words that I've heard so often over the years that Mick was called an English so-and-so, an English this, an English that.
That was the headline on your Irish Times column was, I was there, Roy Keane did not call Mick McCarthy an English something.
Yeah, but that wasn't actually in the movie. In the movie, it was referenced that, look, you shouldn't manage my team, you're English. But I was referencing what I've heard over the years from that, really. But in the movie, he was called English. And that was never mentioned. Roy never said that to Mick McCarthy. Half our side were born in England, essentially. So he was actually then labelling us all in that category, which obviously so many of us that don't feel that way. But anyway, that's a side issue. But within it as well, Mick McCarthy was, the story goes, and I think Roy's even done pieces over the years where he said he accused me of feigning injury. And that didn't happen, as far as I totally remember, and I'm quite clear in what was said. Mick McCarthy never accused Roy Keane of feigning injury. So this is something, again, that's been embellished over the years, largely down to one side or the other that's come out and said their piece. So there was so many inaccuracies.
And you were sat right there when the argument happened, weren't you?
Yeah, absolutely, right beside Roy. Roy was on my left-hand side. Roy was here, over my left shoulder. And the only way, if you're watching this on YouTube, you see it, Mick McCarthy came in from our right-hand side, and we kind of turned the chairs because the tables were so tight to each other, you couldn't move. I couldn't move my chair back, so I kind of swiveled around in my chair like this to see Mick, who was here, and Roy was here. There. Roy was on my left shoulder, so it was so funny how it did turn out, that meeting. Anyway, so that's for another day.
What do you think Roy would have thought about this movie?
I think it paints Roy in quite a favourable light, in all honesty. But there was so much that happened that if some of the things did happen internally between Mick and Roy, I don't know. I weren't partial to a lot of the stuff that was happening. But there was so much within it that it was either embellished or was just total lies. So the way I looked at it was that it wouldn't necessarily be people that would have heard stories about it that would be my age or even above my age, our age, essentially. It's the next generation of supporters that's watching that see us as a team of just drunken louts going to a major tournaments, which I can tell you something now, that just didn't happen. It wasn't that way at all, no.
Well, at least you had the opportunity to put the record straight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be streamed somewhere soon. It's actually in the cinemas over in Ireland right now, and it's become a big hit, obviously, over in Ireland. But the movie, I think, will probably be streamed on some streaming service very soon, I would imagine, so you'll get a chance to see it. Yeah.
Well, Stevie, you need to try and get yourself a copy of this movie so that you can watch it on the way back from Naples. I think when you're on that flight back to Canada, it's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I want to watch it. I'll just add that Mick McCarthy never backed down from anyone in his life.
I know, Stevie, that's the thing. Stevie, and I don't say that, Stevie, you know what Mick was like in team meetings and everything. You know, Mick had his points and he was so strong with the points that he made and how he used to get the point across. He was so clear with his message. If you watch it, you will not recognise the man, Stevie. You won't recognise the man. And I think it's Steve Coogan who plays Mick McCarthy. He plays a role well, but it's not Mick McCarthy who he plays. It absolutely isn't Mick McCarthy that we see on screen and how he's portrayed by Steve Coogan, no.
Yeah, good story, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, I think my start of it was, I remember the old one was, never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Exactly.
That's the way it is, isn't it?
Stevie, have a great trip.
Yeah, enjoy,
Thanks,
mate.
guys.
Enjoy.
Great to see you. I'll see you soon when I'm back.
Hopefully we'll see Stevie back here in Graham Leggett's next week.
Hopefully, we'll see, yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching Park the Bus. You can catch new episodes every Tuesday, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.